Hello and welcome to the Week 17 edition of the Play Action Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined by Joe Fortenbaugh. Dave traveling for the holidays, but Joe, we are not going to stop. We are getting this done here. Week 17. Boy, the NFL is pretty funny after this past week, huh?
Like a fine Christmas ham, Farrah is the fat that we're just excising and sliding to the edge of the plate. And now we can really get to the meat of the matter here in Week 17. A lot to dissect this week, dude. A lot to dissect. Some teams are out. How do we play the motivating factor? You've got a slate of afternoon games, I believe 9 of which have playoff implications. This is going to be a fun week of football.
Yeah, absolutely. We normally give you guys the injury rundowns. Instead, we're going to try to give you either the real life or at least perceived on our end kind of motivation factor that these teams have heading into this week, because that's going to be the big narrative basically all week long. Everyone's going to be talking about, you know, what these teams want, whether they have anything to play for, what they want to play for, yada, yada, yada. Joe, one last thing before we get into this stuff, and you and I were talking about this right before we went on air. We taped this early in the week, and one of the things we are not, you and I are neither one of us are meteorologists, so we don't predict the weather or anything like that. And so one of the things I think we can tell going into Week 17 and then even into the playoffs and further, guys, be sure, and in these bowl games as well, as you're watching these bowl games, is be sure and check the weather out as they go. I mean, Monday Night Football in Philadelphia, I jumped in and hammered the under whenever the weather report came out. It was going to be 19 degrees. The winds were 25 miles an hour with gusts up to 30 miles an hour. That obviously is very, very bad for just about any situation when it comes to scoring points. But, Joe, certainly bad whenever you got a backup quarterback in there trying to do all these things and a bad Raiders team in general. So, you know, I think that trying to look at that stuff and get the little edge that other bettors are not using is certainly something that we can take advantage of.
Wind. Time and time again, we've emphasized it. Others have emphasized it. Don't get caught up too much in the snow or the rain. Now, granted, if it's a snow situation like we saw in Buffalo a few weeks back in that game against whoever that was, I can't even remember it. That's
the Colts.
Indianapolis. Yeah, Indianapolis. If it's a situation like that, a blizzard that's going to give you a foot or more on the field, yes, understandably, that's going to matter. But if we're just talking about snow that's not necessarily accumulating along with rain, that's not the killer. The killer is the wind. And when you see that thing get to 20 mile an hour or greater, that's going to affect the passing game. It's going to affect the kicking game, the punting game. Teams will play to the weather in that situation, especially when it comes to 3rd and 4th down scenarios regarding their punting units. So keep that in mind moving forward. There's always an opportunity this time of year with at least one game to score on a total just before kickoff because of a change in weather.
And on to the early games here, Joe. We got Washington against the Giants here. Nothing to play for the Redskins. They are sitting at 7-8, so if you want to say that maybe they have some motivation to not have a losing season, there is that, I guess, on the Giants side. Eli Manning's last game of the team, perhaps, so, I mean, there's a little bit maybe there. However, on the other side of the ball here, a loss guarantees them the number 2 overall pick in the draft. So there is a little bit of motivation to punt this game here for the Giants. You got Landon Collins going on radio on Tuesday calling a current member of the team, Eli Apple, a cancer in the locker room. So this Giants team just completely ridiculous for this season, completely over it. We got Washington at 3.5 right now, Joe.
There's no reason for the Giants to show up in this game, and that's the beauty of having Steve Spagnuolo as a head coach. I would have to imagine at some point over the course of this week, all the way at the top, the message has gotten down. We don't want to win this game. We need to get set for the future. We have got to get the highest pick possible. It's already a mess out there. What's this going to do? Like, what's this going to do for anybody? So I don't see the Giants showing up. And if Landon Collins wants to say that on radio, that's fine. I mean, clearly it shows a lack of respect for any sort of leadership. And more importantly, it demonstrates that no one's worried about answering to anybody within that locker room. It's a free-for-all. Meanwhile, it's Washington showed us. They've gone out the last 2 weeks and they've won. Kirk Cousins is still playing football. Regardless of what anyone thinks about the injury situation or the lack of production throughout the course of the year for the Redskins, the bottom line is that the last 2 weeks they've played mid-level to below average opposition in Arizona and Denver, and they've won both games because they've come to play. Similar scenario here. I'd lay the points with Washington. I think they're going to want to win this game.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing to me is this line has actually moved in favor of the Giants here, Joe. And I got to be honest with you. I think that this is a crazy situation where I think people are overvaluing the possible narrative of this being Eli Manning's last game here for the Giants. But I got to be honest, he might only play a half here, and then they go ahead and get some look at some of these reserves. I mean, they wanted to do that anyway, obviously. And then I think Eli Manning is probably a guy that would say, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. You and me both going to be on Washington in this game. And listen, like you said, if you're looking at anything, any reason for anyone to play hard in this game, Kirk Cousins has about 27, 28, 30 million reasons why to be playing very, very hard in this game. Next game on the schedule here, the Jets at the Patriots. The Jets, Bryce Petty obviously just playing for a roster spot in 2018. That said, a win here could keep the Patriots out of the number 1 overall seed. So if the Jets wanted to play spoiler there on the Patriots side of the ball, they have locked up a first-round bye. However, a win or a Steelers loss gets them home field advantage throughout the playoffs. We're looking at the Patriots here at anywhere from 15.5 to 17-point favorites in this one, Joe.
I'll take the points with the Jets in this spot for 2 reasons. Number one, the Jets have been playing hard all season long. I'm not sure if maybe behind the scenes head coach Todd Bowles has gotten some sort of ringing endorsement that he'll be back next year, but he is coaching for a job. And Arizona is going to open up with Bruce Arians parting ways. That's where Bowles was the defensive coordinator prior to this. So no matter what ends up happening, Jets or anyone else, Bowles is going to want to go out a winner, and his team has been fighting relatively hard this season as well. Now, on the flip side, what do we have? We have a New England team that has minimal motivation. Win this game for the number 1 seed. You know you're probably going to do that, and then get everyone out of this game healthy. Remember, it was like 9-10 years ago when the Patriots had no business playing in Week 17, but Belichick didn't want to give him the day off. Wes Welker went out in Houston and wrecked his knee and was lost for the entire postseason and had to come back next year and wasn't even 100%, although he did produce early in the year. All that being said, I think New England grabs a lead and then they find a way to just get the hell out of this game. That is a huge spread. Great backdoor opportunity for the Jets. Give me the 17.5, which is out there.
Yeah, and taking a look here, too, at this total, Joe, I mean, listen, if you think the game's going to play out that way, I think a correlation play might be to take the under as well in this game. I mean, obviously, if you think the Jets are going to keep this within 17 points, it's probably not going to be a high-scoring game. You can't think the Jets are going to get into a into a shootout here with the Patriots. If anything, it might be kind of a more sloppy type situation. So maybe we look the under in that game as well. Texans at Colts is our next game on the slate here. On the Texans side of things, the Texans don't even own their first-round pick in 2018, so there's no incentive for them to lose like we're talking about with some of these other teams out there. Bill O'Brien actually came out and said on Tuesday, this is kind of our playoff game. Let's see if that puts an ending on a good – let's see if we can put this on a good – if we can end this on a good note. Yeah, he said you don't want to end up in last place. It's very important to try to win this game and not be – in last place. And of course, on the Colts side, nothing to play for at all, other than the fact that this is likely Chuck Pagano's last game as head coach here. You would have to imagine he will be shown the door as soon as this game is over. We're looking at Indianapolis coming out as 4-point home favorites in this one, Joe.
Last 8 games, the Texans have topped 16 points just once. That was that win over Arizona. Going all the way back to the Colt game, the last time they faced the Colts on November 5th, 14 points, 7 points, 31, which we just talked about, 16, 13, 16, 7, and 6. They don't score. And I mean, O'Brien can say whatever he wants because I think quietly he's trying to save his job, but I think he's going to be one of the surprise firings coming up here in the very near future. I don't see a whole lot of reason that Houston's going to do anything in this game. O'Brien's just talking. From the Colts perspective, it's tough to lay points with these guys. They probably just want to get the heck out of this season as well. You got a total sitting out there at 41. I'll play the under here. I could see this being a really ugly 16-7, 13-10 sort of game. I'll play the under 41 total points.
So the first thing I do every single week is I take a look at the entire slate, and then I'll print out the initial lines, and basically I have a physical piece of paper in front of me, and I go through and I just X out games that I want absolutely nothing to do with. This was the first game that I X'd out this week. You have 2 teams, like you said, 2 teams with absolutely nothing at all to play for. I mean, yeah, Bill O'Brien's going to come out and say, hey, we don't want to finish in last place. Well, no joke. You don't want to finish in last place. Of course you don't want to finish in last place. But, I mean, again, no motivation, nothing. I mean, you look at this team, you look at the quarterback play, how's they going to move the ball. I'm with you. If there's any play in this game, it's probably towards the under here, but probably a big fat pass for me. Next game on the slate here, the Browns at the Steelers. On the Browns side of the ball, Joe, you're going to love this. Since the league went to 16 regular season games, only 2 teams have ever started 0-15. The 2008 Lions and this very Cleveland Browns team that we're talking about right here. So, yeah, basically they're playing to not be the second team ever to go 0-16. On the Steelers side of the ball, they have clinched a first-round bye already. However, if they beat the Browns and the Patriots were to lose, they do get the number 1 overall seed, and that would give them home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So there is a little bit of motivation on the Steelers side here, though, obviously the Patriots losing is a very slim chance.
I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing during that Lions 16th game. I remember because we had all bet against them because the story had come out earlier in the week that they had flyers up around town. They were going to be throwing an 0-16 party. They were just ready for the season to end. They didn't care at all, and they got their asses waxed in that final game of the season. Can't remember who it was against. I want to say Green Bay, but I'm not positive. But what are we going to see from Cleveland? Are these guys going to act in a similar fashion where they just want to get the hell out of this season? Or do you have enough youth and inexperience here where these guys are going to play with some pride? And I mean, we don't even need them to win. We don't need to see a lot of pride. We just need them to keep it within 14 if we like the Browns. But every single week, this is what happens in Vegas. Every week, the books take sharp money on the Browns because this is supposed to be the week. And virtually every week, these dudes lose because Cleveland can't hold up their end of the bargain. I'm trying to put my mind in the state of the Steelers. James Harrison has just left. You cut him, and he signs with the Patriots. You're going to be watching the Patriots on the scoreboard, but if they're up on the Jets and you realize you're locked into that number 2 seed, I mean, I can't see a whole lot of motivation. Plus the Antonio Brown injury and all that. I lean to the Browns. I got to be honest. I lean to the Browns here if I can get 14 and a hook.
Listen, I understand it's a credible donkey play, but I listen, I understand that, but I'm going with I'm making assumptions, right? And here's the thing. We saw it at the end of this past week's game. They got Ben out of there as soon as they knew that game was in hand. They put Landry Jones in, and Landry Jones started taking snaps. I'm with you on this. I think this is one of those deals. They look up, they see the Patriots up by 17 points in the game, and they go, hey, we already have Antonio Brown who's going to be nicked up. We sure as hell don't want Ben Roethlisberger or Le'Veon Bell nicked up in this game. They went and signed Stephen Ridley, basically, I think, to come in over these last 2 weeks and just take hits to where Le'Veon Bell doesn't have to take the hits. So for me, I'm kind of like you. Look, 14 and a hook. I can see Cleveland getting there kind of in the back door. I mean, I can see them kind of getting there with one of those.
It's a total of 39. You're getting 14 and a half in a game Vegas is telling you is going to have virtually no scoring. Yeah. That's insane that we have to worry about this, but we do. We do. It's Cleveland.
Yeah, it would basically any other scenario we would be like, oh yeah, this is the obvious player. I mean, they're the ones that are super motivated here. They don't want to go 0-16. Pittsburgh likely to pull starters as soon as they possibly can in the game, and we're wondering whether we can take 14 and a half points.
I mean, it's going to be cold. They don't want to play their starters. They got no motivation. These guys don't want to go on 15. I don't know. 14 in a hook might not be enough. I mean, if you put 20 in the hook out here, we'd be. If you had 20 in the hook out here, we'd be having the exact same conversation. I wouldn't be any more convinced or any less convinced.
We would. Crazy game here. Looking here, the Packers and the Lions next up here. Packers absolutely nothing to play for other than the fact that maybe they want to get to 500. Of course, they are one game under 500 right now, so maybe that's a motivating factor. We can see the Lions officially eliminated from the playoffs after their pathetic performance against that Bengals team. Good Lord, how terrible was that? And after that, Joe, this is something you and we talked about. We think that there's going to be 7 to 10 head coaching jobs open up in the NFL this year. After that loss, lots of calls for Jim Caldwell's head in that one after going 2-3 in their last 5 games and getting booted out of the playoffs here. Maybe this is a team that is trying to rally around Jim Caldwell. Maybe this is some motivating factor for Detroit. But again, this game looks like a game of 2 teams with absolutely nothing to play for.
Let me ask you something. Could any coach win in Detroit? Honestly, does it matter if it's Caldwell or the next mid-level guy who would be willing to take that job? You're never going to get a star in Detroit. You need to hope you can hit pay dirt with a really young guy like Sean McVay, and that guy's not going to want to go to Detroit.
You're a Lions fan. You're a Lions fan, and I were to tell you that 15 games into the season that the Packers were 7-8. And you weren't going to make the playoffs. I mean, I can't even imagine what this must be like.
And the Bears are trash. Here's what you know before the season: the Bears will be trash, and Rodgers is going to get hurt, and the Packers are going to be out of it. I'd be like, damn, I'm looking around the NFC thinking we're in wild card at least. And no, you miss it because you went to a team that had scored 14 total points over the last 2 weeks. They had absolutely laid down against Mitchell Trubisky and the Bears, and then went to Minnesota and got rolled. They have no reason to show up. You get up on them early. and you piss it away because you're that lousy of a football team. I got no faith in either club in this game. This is one of those, we can sit here and bat it back and forth. Detroit is utterly pathetic. They are so lucky that Dallas got beat by Seattle. Otherwise, everyone would be railing on Caldwell and Stafford and this Lions team again coming out flat in a really big spot. But instead, the Cowboys lose that game and they take all the thunder away from Detroit.
And yeah, I mean, they're basically Cowboys North. I mean, it was horrible play calling, everything to play for, totally lay a complete egg here. When you look at this spread, Joe, at 7, it's just at a touchdown for Detroit. I'm never, ever doing that with the way I've seen this team play on multiple occasions this year. And can I put any faith whatsoever in Green Bay with Brett Hundley at quarterback? I mean, this is another one of those games. We're about to get to the good games here. I think this is another one of those games that, 1, you don't want to watch on TV anyway. 2, might as well pass on it and not play because it's just going to be disgusting. Cowboys at Eagles here. Cowboys eliminated from the playoff contention after that loss to Seattle. Oh my God, what a pathetic loss. Seattle actually had more penalty yards than they had total yards of offense, and they still won the game against the Cowboys there. Jerry Jones did come out and gave Jason Garrett his seal of approval, gave him some confidence there. But listen, man, if they get embarrassed here by this Eagles team, we'll see. Eagles, nothing to play for whatsoever. Clint's the number 1 overall seed. They've got the bye. They've got home field locked up. So, Joe, I mean, I'm kind of reading the tea leaves here because they talked about it even a little bit last week. I think Foles starts here, but I think we end up seeing Matt McGloin in this game. I don't think we see Foles for all 60 minutes in this one. I think they're going to want to get the backup a little bit of reps just in case, worst case scenario, Foles were to go down here. This is another one of those games where I understand where the spread's at. I think that's baked into the line here with Dallas being, a 2.5 point favorites here. I think that's baked in that the Eagles are going to be resting starters, which until we can get later in the week and get confirmation one way or the other, again, seems like a game I'm just going to have to wait on.
All right. First off, Nick Foles is not winning you a Super Bowl. So if you're operating under the assumption that you need to protect Nick Foles from a possible injury, you're doing it wrong, Doug Peterson. This guy needs as many reps as humanly possible to give you any chance whatsoever. You should not be sitting him outside of maybe the last 2 series, because if you're turning it over to Sudfeld or McGloin or whoever the hell it's going to be, you're not going to win. So you don't need to worry about those guys getting reps. Foles needs as many reps as possible.
That's true. Maybe we're looking at a situation where they sit like Ertz, who's been hurt a couple games this year.
They should sit everyone. They just lost their MVP quarterback a few weeks ago, costing them the Super Bowl. They should be sitting everyone in this game. There is literally no reason for Malcolm Jenkins, Fletcher Cox, Zach Ertz, Alshon Jeffrey, for any of these dudes to be on the field whatsoever. Why? Oh, so they can get more reps with Nick Foles? No. You already know the problems you've got. Defensively, you've had a world of hurt. You should be sitting everyone.
You got to buy week. You got to buy week to get all that worked out. I mean,
I'm playing Dallas here. Dallas is terrible, but Prescott's going to want to atone for how bad he looked last week. He's young enough, and he's aware enough. He has enough situational awareness to understand he's not as good as everyone made him out to be last season, even with Zeke back. I mean, he stunk, and with no Zeke, he shows it. So I think Dallas is going to want to at least atone a little bit. This is going to be an ugly game, but I'll take the Cowboys here.
How do we feel about the motivation of maybe trying to play to save the coach's job? Do you think that that's a thing here, or do you think that this locker room, I mean, you got Des Bryant losing his mind on the sideline at everybody that'll listen to him. Do you think there's a sentiment to try and save Garrett's job here, or do you think it's more just about a pride thing?
I think that's a great angle for a lot of teams with coaches on the bubble. I don't know if it applies here. I think even in Dallas, they understand that Jerry's the one making all the decisions and that Garrett's a puppet. I don't think there's any illusions that Jason Garrett is anything other than a guy who stands on the sidelines clapping and making bad game management decisions when the game's on the line. Like, that's all he is. I don't think his players look at him as some great coach or some bad coach. He's just some guy who stands in as a shadow character for Jerry Jones. So, I mean, if anything, I think they're going to want to show a little bit of pride because of how bad they played last week. And I think that's where they get Philadelphia, who's just happy to have survived the Oakland game. They're looking ahead to the playoffs. They got no reason to even bother with this thing.
Yeah, last game on the morning slate here, but this game still does have something to be played for here. We got the Bears at the Vikings. Of course, on the Bears side, I mean, John Fox is now 14-33 as the Bears head coach. He's dead man walking, definitely going to be shown the door when this game is over. But on the Viking side of things, there's things to be played for here. So they have clinched the NFC North. They're currently the number 2 seed. That being said, they only hold a 1-game lead over the Rams, Saints, and the Panthers. So They play the morning slate. All those teams play the late slate. So they got to win, because if they lose, any of those teams could actually overtake them, win in the early slate here, and they get the bye. So the Vikings definitely have motivation to go out and win this game. We've seen this line move from opening at 11.5 all the way up to 13 in some spots here, Joe. I think based off the fact that they know this Vikings team needs to win.
First gut reaction is maybe an underplay here, because I think, like we talked about with New England, Minnesota's going to get up and then they're going to want to get the hell out. They're at home. They got to buy. They're not going to want to risk anything. I mean, you look at the Bears, and it's really a scenario where we just need to not go out there and shoot ourselves in the foot. You'll beat the Bears as long as you don't give the game away. If you go out and play like fools, turn the ball over, try to make a lot of stupid decisions on 4th and 1 in your own 30, going for it, things like that, just kick it away. Let the Bears beat themselves. It's what they've done all season. I would lean to an under here. I would also possibly lean to the Bears on a backdoor cover. I think Mitchell Trubisky and some of the offense, they're going to want to show something here late in the season, because let's face it, you're so young. You want to be competitive. These guys aren't at a point yet where they just want to check out. Minnesota just needs a lead, slight lead to the Bears, but I don't really like the game at all.
So I think this is a prime tease candidate right here. Whenever we see these 12s and 12.5s, and we can get this under a touchdown, like I mentioned, this Vikings team getting the number 2 seed is huge. I mean, that's absolutely massive. They are not going to dick around here. They are going to want to make sure they get that 2 seed. Everybody wants that bye. So, I mean, when you look at this, to me, prime candidate to tease this under a touchdown. And I think the Vikings win by a touchdown all day long. Been having a lot of success. You and I both, we talk a lot during the week. Been having a lot of success with these teasers on these teams that, if you can get it under a touchdown, where they're basically just the incredible dominant team. So really like the Vikings there in the first half of a 6-point teaser. Here, now we're getting into the good stuff here, Joe. All right, now we're getting into the good stuff. Panthers at Falcons. You want to talk about a game that means something. Panthers, at worst, the Panthers can be the 5th seed. However, if they win and the Saints lose, they win the NFC South. But if the Vikings also lose earlier that morning, they could jump all the way to the number 2 seed, because they beat the Vikings in week 14. So this Panthers team, while they still have a lot to play for, even if the Vikings win earlier in the morning, they can still win the NFC South. So a lot to play for there for the Panthers. Also, they can keep the Falcons out of the playoffs. The Falcons clinch a wild card spot with a win. They can still get in if the Seahawks happen to lose, but they are all playing in this late slate of games, so they won't know. So everybody's going to be playing very, very hard in this game. Panthers travel to Atlanta here, and they are 3.5, 4-point dogs at Atlanta here, Joe.
A little suspicious, this line, to be honest with you. I think it's too many points to lay for Atlanta. That's the first thing that catches my attention. I'm thinking to myself, I can get 4 with Carolina. That seems like a no-brainer. And then I'm wondering, am I being baited into Carolina? Is this that game where they're trying to sucker me in like they did a few weeks ago with Atlanta and Minnesota? Now, granted, didn't Minnesota end up winning that game?
Well,
I think you were on Minnesota, or it was late. They covered.
Yeah. It was one of those situations where Minnesota ended up not covering in that game, because if you remember, there was a couple of drop touchdown passes and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean,
but Atlanta won that game, right? Yeah, and then Minnesota went and lost to Carolina the following week.
This to me seems like one of those scenarios where I'm guessing, and we're going to figure this out as the week plays on. I'm guessing they're just assuming that the Vikings are going to win in this early slate. Carolina's going to look up and be like, we can't get the bye anyway. We're already in the playoffs. The worst we can get's a 5th seed. We're going to be playing next week anyway. To me, it just seems like one of those things where they're looking at Carolina maybe being deflated in this situation, with Atlanta having everything to play for, because obviously they win and they're in.
Yeah, this is it's too volatile. I don't want to lay those points with Atlanta, because I think Atlanta's been overvalued all season long. But at the same time, knowing how much of a front runner Cam Newton is at times, I could see him looking up, seeing Minnesota wins, and then see New Orleans leading a really lousy Tampa Bay team, and realizing the 5th seed is theirs. Forget this. Everyone's
already in the playoffs.
Lazy and complacent. So, I mean, maybe a slight lean to Atlanta. I might look to the under too. I think you might get some sloppy play here. 46.5 is a lot. It's a lot of points, and you need some offensive precision. I'm not sure you're going to get that in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Carolina has actually been running the ball a lot more lately. I like the under here in this game as well, Joe. I mean, I think this game could get to a point to where like you said, if they're scoreboard watching at Carolina, you could get to a point here, especially with how the nature in which Cam Newton plays football, that you're going to want to get him out of the game if there's nothing to play for whatsoever. You're going to want to get Cam Newton out of the game because the guy, like, listen, he makes some amazing plays, but he does not think twice about tucking that ball and running, and he takes a ton of hits. He doesn't slide a lot of times. This is one of those situations, if you're being smart, you're looking and you're going, the sooner we can get Cam out of here, the better. So, yeah, I'm with you here. I think this is one of those motivation factor games as well. Buffalo at Miami. The Bills can still make the playoffs. Obviously, they need to win. They also need the Ravens to lose, or they need to win and both the Titans and the Chargers lose. So there's a couple of different scenarios in which the Bills can still make the playoffs. Then you got the Dolphins in this game, and you want to talk about a team that has no motivation whatsoever. Started 4-2, finished up the season 2-7. You got Jay Cutler, who's definitely on his way out the door. So this is his last game with the team. This, to me, I understand, Buffalo has been certainly a very frustrating team for all of us in the betting community, Joe, but I only have to lay 2.5 points at 5 dimes right now against, again, a Miami team where Smokin' Jay is just ready to collect his $10 million check, go sit on the beach with his hot wife and whatever. To me, this seems like a steal. I don't know. What am I missing? What am I missing here?
Whether or not Buffalo bothers showing up, even though they're in the playoffs, like you said, they have a playoff scenario where they can get in. They knew if they could handle New England last week, they're unbelievable. Their arch rival, their nemesis of 2 decades now. If they could have found a way to handle New England last week and shock the world, I mean, they're in. Everything sets up beautifully for them. And then they go out there and they get shellacked in the second half of that football game, proving once again they're just not ready for prime time. I wonder if you spend the week thinking to yourself, man, we went from controlling our destiny to getting waxed once again by the Patriots. You kind of get put back in your place because of that game against New England. And then you look around and now all of a sudden you need all this help. You were in for a few weeks. Now all of a sudden you need help to get in. I wonder if they even bother showing up. What I like about it is that Sean McDermott's going to want to win. They're not going to jockey for draft position. I mean, look at where they're sitting. Tyrod Taylor is constantly out there trying to prove for himself that he belongs in the National Football League. And I think you have enough core leadership on this team that Buffalo has a desire to play and win. I could see the rallying cry being, even if we're not getting in, let's finish this season strong. It's been a good season. Let's build on something for next year. And as you said with Miami, who the hell wants to even be out there playing?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like on this Buffalo side, you do have kind of a scrappy team. And like you said, you got Tyrod Taylor, who's playing to prove it. And then you got Kelvin Benjamin, who, going out there and playing with a torn meniscus. I mean, this guy is like going out and trying to help his team. Obviously has that catch that I think is a catch that no one else think is a catch, but whatever. Hopefully they'll remedy this in the offseason and we can all finally understand.
Sure, they'll get it solved.
Yeah, certainly we can at least try and figure out what the hell is and is not a catch or whatever. I don't know. I like what I see in this Buffalo team, and I think there is a motivation factor here for them to go out and listen. Yeah, it's a slim chance they get in, but listen, it's a chance. And this Miami team, you're finishing up a 2-7 stretch here with a quarterback who everybody knows 1 foot out the door here. To me, this seems like a Buffalo side, and I'll probably be playing Buffalo here as the week progresses. Next game here is Jacksonville at Tennessee. On the Jaguar side, they have clinched the AFC South. They cannot fall below the 3. They cannot make it to the 2. But if you're looking for any motivation there, they could knock out a division rival from the playoffs, because if they beat the Titans are out. So if there's any motivation on the Jaguar side, that's what it would be, but they can't climb or fall, so they're basically locked in where they're at. The Titans have lost 3 in a row, Joe, but can still make the playoffs. That's the AFC for you right there. Clinch a wild card spot with a win here. Can also make the playoffs with a loss if the Bills and the Chargers both lose. But again, all this is taking place in the late games, so they won't know going into the game. Maybe they can do some scoreboard watching and whatnot, but definitely all happening at the same time here. Very interesting scenario for me. You have this Tennessee team coming in as 6-point favorites. Obviously, they are baking in that they think the Jacksonville is going to rest everybody.
I'll take the Jaguars here. I like the Jags. I think the Jags, and I'm going to play this based on my own knowledge, and if for some reason the Jags go the other way, then I'm going to be wrong on this big time. But if you think for 1 second that you're good as the 3 seed after what happened to you in San Francisco last weekend, you got another thing coming.
That's exactly where I was going to go with this.
This is a Tom Coughlin team, right? Tom Coughlin watched what just happened in San Francisco. There's no way he's saying, look, let's rest everyone week 17, Doug. Let's play this thing smart. We're going to the playoffs. We'll be okay. Absolutely not. They got a lot they need to work out on the defensive end. That doesn't mean you play 4 hard quarters of football, but there's absolutely no way that after that defensive showing, a team that if you want any chance whatsoever to make a run, you're going to need to play defense. You know Bill Belichick is drooling over that film. You know Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are drooling over that film. They watched San Francisco systematically pick you apart because they knew how to out-scheme your defense, and your defense had no answers. So if you want to rest this week and because you're fine as the 3 seed, good luck, man, because the tape you just put out there, you are exposed. This is a week where you need to go work things out, and Blake Bortles can't get enough work. All right, let's not kid ourselves here. So Bortles doesn't need to be rested. He needs to play. This team really needs to play in this game. You're catching 6. I think the Jags win this one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm looking at this game and I'm going, okay, at worst, maybe they sit Leonard Fournette, who's been banged up a little bit, who's been banged up a little bit. And okay, let's get him that extra week as we head into the playoffs, because certainly we don't want our workhorse back all nicked up heading into there. Maybe at worst case scenario, but you mentioned the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball, if you look at the box score, it was very misleading, because if you actually watched that game, which I know you were, because you and I were texting back and forth, Blake Bortles had a vintage Blake Bortles game in that game. He got garbage time. He got garbage time yards, and it makes his stats look good. And just like he did, a couple of years ago, whatever, when they were losing every game by 27 points. And so he'd finish with these weird 300-yard games, and you'd be like, oh, he's not that bad. But no, he was awful for 3.5 quarters. That's exactly what happened in this one. Those were garbage time yards where he was able to get up over 300 yards in this one. If you watch the game, Blake Bortles put in a vintage Blake Bortles, missing wide open receivers, throwing the wrong passes.
Adrian Colbert had an interception that doesn't show up because he fell down and he dropped it. It was such a bad pass. He completely airmailed the wide receiver and just kind of floated it right down the middle of the field to Colbert. Yeah. Colbert fell down and dropped it. That was a pick right there. Yeah. I mean, it's do not look at that box score.
So like you said, they've got work to do on both sides of the ball in this one. I'm with you here. This was one of the ones I said I X out games that I also circle. I circled the hell out of this one. And not only do they have issues to work out here, but you can also get Tennessee out of the playoffs here, a team that's very familiar with you, and you certainly don't want to deal with that whenever you're going into the playoffs here. I really like Jacksonville in this one as well, Joe.
You know what's crazy? Let me ask you something. How many wins does Tennessee have? What are they sitting on, 8?
Yeah.
Where did these 8 wins come from? It feels like every time I see them on TV, they lose, or I talk about them and they lose, or they're going into a game they're going to lose. How did they build up 8 wins? The first game of the season, you and I were hanging out in Vegas. We watched the Raiders go down there and beat them. We both lost money on that game. Where did these 8 games come from? It feels like someone just snuck this by me, and now I'm just suspicious. Like, I don't think you won 8 games. I think you're lying.
If they make the playoffs here, I will go out on a limb. And I know some people are going to start tweeting me and telling me, you're forgetting this team, and that team. I'm talking about a team that I've watched with my own eyeballs for most games this year. This will be the worst team to ever make the playoffs that I've ever seen. I mean, they can't do anything well. They
got Saturday afternoon wild card written all over.
They do nothing well. They do not play defense well. They do not run the ball well. They do not pass the ball well. They do nothing well, yet somehow they are going to make the playoffs here. Absolutely crazy watching this team here. Give me that Jacksonville. Give me that Jacksonville all day. Cincinnati is heading to Baltimore on the Bengals side. Marvin Lewis's last game this Sunday, Joe. 124, 112, and 3 as head coach for this team, but the big number 0-7 in the playoffs. That's probably what's going to be remembered from that legacy there. That being said, if we, you talked about earlier, sometimes we hear about this, sometimes we don't. We definitely do hear out of that locker room that they love they love Lewis. So, I mean, this actually could be a motivating factor for this team. They actually really, really do like Lewis. So maybe they play hard for him in this game. On the Ravens side of the ball, look, it's ugly, but since they're bye in week 10, they're 5-1. So this team has been winning football games. They have clinched the number 5 seed. They also get in, a win clinches them the number 5 seed. They also get in if, the Titans lose, as we mentioned just a second ago. So there is a big motivation factor for the Ravens to win. They get in, but on the Bengals side, look, you can play spoiler, and you can send your coach of a decade out on a high note. Does that matter to you at all? Do you think there's any of that play here?
There are plenty of other games to bet this weekend. I don't need this game. I'm tired of trying to handicap the mindset of the Cincinnati Bengals, right? I'm just tired, and I don't want to watch this game. I don't want to watch Joe Flacco versus Andy Dalton. I have no interest in that.
It's quite 10.5 points in some places. There's just no way. There's just no way.
I mean, I want to believe, like you're saying, that these guys are going to show up for Marvin Lewis, but it's like I wanted to believe last week Detroit was going to show up in a must-win spot against the Cincinnati team that had laid down. And the Bengals, the problem with Detroit is they left Cincinnati hang around long enough where the Bengals looked up and they were like, oh, let's screw up our draft position and go win this game. And they went out and they won the game. I don't know which Bengals team you're going to get. I could see this team wanting to play for Marvin, but they're so gutless and spineless that I could also see Baltimore getting a field goal on the opening drive and then a fumble return for a touchdown, and it's 10-0 5 minutes in, and then I could see the Bengals just packing it in entirely. There are too many variables at play here with these guys. It's an overall pass for me.
Yeah, the points, if the spread was a little bit lower, maybe I would play the Baltimore side because, again, all the motivation in the world on their end. But, 10.5, man, 10.5, that's just a lot for a team that I just maybe it's just because I don't want to bet the game and watch it. Like you said, maybe it's just I'm letting my bias in.
Listen, we're not young guys anymore, right? We're in our mid-30s. Like, you should enjoy your life. And if you can find a great angle, right? If it's a miserable game, but you have great information, some insights, something that gives you an edge to win that game, then absolutely bet it. But if we're just going to try to force an angle here, forget it. I'd rather force an angle in a game that's going to be interesting to watch than this trash. Because I guarantee you something. This will not be a good football game. This will not be a game that come Monday morning, people are like, dude, did you see Flacco and Dalton dueling it out in week 17? No one's going to mention that. No one's ever said that.
Saints at Bucks here. The Saints are definitely in the playoffs, but where they sit is what's up for grabs here. They hold the tiebreaker over the Panthers, so if both teams win, it still goes to the Saints here. However, a win, they could get as high as the number 3 seed in this one, Joe, if the Rams were to lose. On the Bucs side of the ball, sitting at 4-11, Joe. Likely Dirk Cutter's last game as head coach there, a team that has greatly disappointed, right up there with, I would say the Denver Broncos as far as the most disappointing team in all of the NFL, and maybe the Oakland Raiders, I guess, disappointing teams in all the NFL this year. We're sitting here looking at the New Orleans as a 7.5 point favorite on the road here at Tampa. How do you feel about this one?
I think this is our prime teaser candidate of the week.
Yep.
I think we're both going to say the same thing. We haven't talked about it beforehand. You see it sitting 7.5. You can tease it down to 1.5. All the motivation in the world. Well, I wouldn't say all the motivation in the world, but enough motivation to show up, play, and win versus a team that, I mean, these guys, Tampa is an embarrassment. If they were in a major media market, we would talk more about how highly dysfunctional they are. They're worse than Dallas with the talent they have and what they screw up.
If Jameis was the quarterback of the Jets, or if he was the quarterback of the Giants, it would be the end of the world. I mean,
and not only that, it's people keep trying to say, like, man, they got a great quarterback and some great pieces. You know what? I don't think Winston's that good of a quarterback. I don't think he's a good decision maker. I don't think he's mature.
That's what it is. He shows flashes of greatness from time to time that makes you go, oh, that's that guy that we saw in college that everyone was talking about was going to be so good. And then the very next series, he makes one of the worst decisions you've ever seen any quarterback make that looks like it's a rookie playing his first game. But then you go, wait, he's not a rookie playing his first game. This is a guy who's supposed to have been making this giant step forward. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Tampa Bay.
You know who you just described? You just described Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
Like, that's who he is. He's Jay Cutler. He shows you enough brilliance that you're like, man, this is a franchise guy. And he's got the accolades and the arm and all that. And then you go back and you watch and it's like, man, this guy really can't string it together. He can't put it together. He's Jay Cutler.
The Saints are going to win this game. You tease this down under a field goal. They're definitely going to win here. There's basically no they have motivation enough to win this game, where Tampa, again, we talk about these. There's a few teams out there with absolutely nothing to play for. They know their coach is out the door. You don't hear these players talking about how much they love Dirk Cutter. It's not one of those things where they're going to be rallying around him or trying to save his job or any of that stuff. You got the crazy this is a Saints teaser all day long, and I love the play. Love it.
I think you can look under 50.5 as well. I think you get into a situation where Sean Payton and Drew Brees are winning this game and they feel like they're in control and Tampa's packed it in. Run that clock down, get the hell out of there. They're smart enough to realize they don't need to take too many risks if they're winning. Let Tampa beat themselves. I think 50.5 is a really high number.
Oakland at the Chargers here. The Raiders, Joe, from 12-4 to 6-9 with 1 to go here. Jack Del Rio is now 25-21 as head coach of the Raiders. Maybe on the hot seat, but probably not. All the money that they have locked up in him, but maybe if they get embarrassed here, there could maybe be some discussions that are going on. The Chargers can still make the playoffs. They need a win, obviously. They need the Titans to lose to the Jaguars and the Ravens to beat the Bengals. They can also get in if both the Titans and the Bills lose. So a couple different scenarios for the Chargers to still get in the playoffs here. Raiders traveling to the Chargers here. Chargers 8 point, 7.5 in one place favorites in this one, Joe.
Raiders are a mess. I mean, jeez, like even when they tried, they had opportunities Monday night against Philly, and then they had what, like 3 fumbles in 6 minutes. I mean, they're just turning the ball over time and time again. Boy. Did you see Todd Downing on the Amari Cooper touchdown, running and dancing up and down the sideline? Dude, you are not going to be employed by the Raiders next season.
Then didn't throw the ball downfield again for another 5 series or whatever. It's just absurd. And then you look at this, and we talk about Jameis and Mariota, and we gave those guys hard times all year long. It's time for Derek Carr to take some heat as well whenever we start talking about guys that were supposed to step up and haven't. This guy's seeing ghosts, man. Like, I don't know if that injury, like, maybe permanently messed him up in the head, but like, he is kind of doing that throw the ball away thing way before you have to, and like different things like that. And you can just tell he doesn't, I mean, nobody wants to get hit, but it's part of the job when you're a quarterback, but he really, really, really doesn't want to get hit.
He does not want to get hit at all. He got hurt last year at the end of the season, and then he's still playing with this back injury. And now all the apologists are coming out of the woodwork. Hey, man, Derek's not going to make an excuse, all right, but I'm going to go ahead and get it out there. Like, he's playing with those broken 3 transverse fractures. Yeah, but when it happened, everyone said, yeah, it's painful, but you can play through that. I mean, what are you doing? Like, here's how this works. When you sign for $5 and $125, the excuses are out the window. That's it. That's the end of it. I don't care if you're playing hurt. I don't care what it is. You don't have to play hurt. You can just not play, but you're choosing to play, so you will be evaluated based on that performance. If you were still on your rookie deal, you'd catch a break, but instead you signed to become the 2nd highest paid player in the NFL. You will be judged accordingly. And when you don't produce and you play scared in the pocket and you make a lot of mistakes, you're going to catch criticism. I'm sorry if you don't like that, and I'm sorry if you think that's unfair, but it's absolutely fair because you're the 2nd highest paid guy in the league. All these guys have no problem signing these contracts. But then when the additional scrutiny comes, it's like, whoa, man, remember what I did last year? No, I remember what you did this year. I'm teasing the Chargers down, and I'm taking the Chargers. Too big a spread. I'll tease it up with the Saints.
Yeah, you look at this right here. We talk about this all the time. When we see 2s and we see 8s, we always wonder, do I tease this up or tease this down? And do I feel really good about it? Like we mentioned right here, Oakland, supposed to be the next best thing in the whole wide world, disappointed greatly. This team has absolutely nothing to play for. Then you look at the Chargers, who, look, they laid an egg in Arrowhead, but a lot of teams have laid an egg in Arrowhead. I mean, this was one of the hottest teams. This is a recency bias thing right here, Joe. This is one of those things where people don't want to bet the Chargers because they remember that egg that they laid in Arrowhead. But listen, this is still the same Chargers team that had rattled off all those wins that we were talking about was one of the hottest teams in the league right here.
8 of 11?
Yeah. I mean, this is a good team with a good defense. They are going to beat Oakland. Maybe not by 8 points, but certainly feel good about getting that down under a field goal for sure. All right, this is a game that is, you would think would not be interesting, but has become very interesting. We've got the 49ers.
This is going to be the best game of the weekend. This will be the best game of the weekend right here.
49ers heading to the Rams. 49ers started 0-9. Since then have won 5 of 6, and of course are 4-0 under God and Jesus himself, Jimmy G. This could be a statement game for this team. Obviously, look, it's not going to get them in the playoffs or anything, but beating the Rams here is a statement game to say, like, hey, you're going to have to reckon with us next year, everybody. The Rams, they've already clinched the NFC West. They can't get to the number 2 seed. They're going to host a wild card game no matter what, whether it's the number 3 or the 4 seed. But the thing is a win does get them set up. If you want to look for a narrative here as to why they have a motivation to win, a win does put them in place to host the NFC Championship game if the Eagles and whoever ends up the number 2 seed loses. So I understand that's looking way down the line, but still, if you can host the NFC Championship game, you're going to want to host the NFC Championship
Coaches
game.
Look for whatever they can look for motivation. If that's an angle, that they'll play that. I didn't know if you still had more there. All right, here's what we're going to do with this. So I rode Garoppolo and the 49ers for 3 straight weeks, cashed them all, and then last week jumped off. My line, I wrote about it. I talked about it on air. I talked about it here, was too big a step up in class.
Yeah.
Too big a step up in class. I was wrong. So now I'm jumping right back on and I'm taking the 4 points. I live here in the Bay Area. I studied this team incessantly, and they want to play football. They enjoy playing football. They love their coaching staff. They love their quarterback. They love each other. They get along really well. Everybody's playing for contracts. Everybody's playing to win. This brotherhood, it's like there's this thing going around now that, you know, put the Niners in the playoffs. Like, they're more deserving than some of these other teams. They're more exciting. They know that they're on something special and that they're only going to get better over the next year. And this is the Rams. Everyone's starting to buy in already that with the Seahawks coming down and with Bruce Arians and Carson Palmer leaving the Cardinals, this is going to be a rivalry. Shanahan and McVay, two brilliant play callers. Jimmy Garoppolo versus Jared Goff, the future of the quarterback position in the NFC. I mean, this is what people are going to talk about. Give me the 4 points. It's not going to shock me if San Francisco wins. I'll take the 4 points here.
I got to be honest, and you know, there's nothing this early in the week that leads me that has come out to, you know, verify this. This is just riding a hunch here. If you're the Rams, I do understand the whole host the NFC Championship game. If the two teams above you lose in the playoffs, I get all that. To me, look, Goff is too important. Gurley is way too important.
Gurley for sure.
Like, I mean, these guys can't play. And if they do play, you play them for the first quarter or something, and then you get them out of there. This is a team that could make some noise if everything goes right. And and let me tell you, Gurley goes down, out of there. Goff goes down, out of there. You need Robert Woods healthy. You saw what a difference it makes when he steps up. You got to get him out of there. You can't be playing these guys for full snaps here, Joe. So I'm with you. Like, listen, if I can take 4 points and you know, maybe this is one of those scenarios where maybe I even get froggy and bet the money line here on this one on San Francisco.
I do it. I mean, how much of a risk is it? Remember, if you're Sean McVay and you're this brilliant play caller, one thing you're filing away is, I don't want to show too much here. There are a few wrinkles that you're going to want to show next week in the opening round of the playoffs when you host that first game. You're a brilliant play caller. You know it. You've already been thinking ahead. There's a lot that he might want to show this week to throw you off the scent. That could end up leading to some sloppy play, a couple mistakes here and there. I mean, the Rams are playing for something bigger. This is the Super Bowl for the Niners.
Yeah, the way we see running backs drop every single week, left and right, all the time, be it to an injury or a concussion or anything like that, you just can't risk that with Todd Gurley. You just cannot do it in a game that does not mean anything to you immediately. You got to get him out of there. If I were them, I wouldn't even play him at all in this game. Cardinals heading to the Seahawks here. Cardinals, nothing to play for except narratives if you buy into narratives. Joe, there are all kinds of narratives here for the Cardinals. Could be Bruce Arians' last game. He might retire. Could be Larry Fitzgerald's last game. He might retire. Could be Carson Palmer's last game. Of course, he won't be playing, but he might retire in the offseason as well. So you've got a bunch of guys here that could be retiring on the Cardinals side. And, of course, the spoiler narrative is at play here as well, because they can keep the Seahawks out of the playoffs if they were to win this game. Of course, the Seahawks need a win, and they need the Falcons to lose to make the playoffs here. So do you buy into the narratives? We got the Seahawks coming in as 8-9 point favorites in this one.
Too many points. It's just too many points, no matter the narratives, when you've got a Seattle team that struggled this much throughout the year, especially when you've got this total. So you might get a messy game here. Arians is gone. The report's already been out that they've mutually agreed to part ways. Fitzgerald's, I'm assuming, coming back because he just signed that extension. Carson Palmer's got to be gone. This is going to be a team that's a candidate for not only a new coach, but to go out there and maybe, I don't know, they make a move for Alex Smith as a placeholder, or maybe they're out there drafting their quarterback of the future. I wonder how the Earl Thomas thing is going to play in Seattle. Everyone in Seattle is going to spend the week talking about how this guy with another year left on his contract runs up to Jason Garrett after the game and tells him basically, if you get a chance, come get me in free agency. Like, that's got to rub you the wrong way if you're in Seattle. And Thomas got into that Twitter fight with, who was it, Bobby Wagner, his own teammate, a couple weeks back, and he's been outspoken about wanting to retire. Something's there. He doesn't like Seattle. There's something with the team or whatever it may be. Richard Sherman calling out the fans. I don't know here, man. This is one of those games where I've got more going on in the afternoon wave. I don't need money here. Yeah, maybe so. If I'm playing this game, and I know you guys hate because I continue to just like talk up these teasers, but listen, there are nines out there to where you can tease this up over 2 touchdowns. This Seattle team is not good, man. This Seattle team is not good. They had more penalty yards than they had total yards in that game against the Cowboys. I mean, you watch Russell Wilson running for his friggin' life. They have no run game to speak of whatsoever. This defense is certainly a defense that can be had. I mean,
look, I don't love Arizona by any stretch of the imagination with all the injuries they've got going on and whatnot, but are they going to lose by 2 touchdowns to this piss poor Seattle team?
And Bruce Arians is a guy they like. Bruce Arians is a very player friendly coach. I work with Lo Neal up here in the Bay Area. Lo sings the praises of Bruce Arians.
You hear that all the time. Like you hear that from every player. I mean, you see videos of them hanging out with him in the offseason, like them going and just hanging out with their head coach in the offseason.
He's a cool guy. Like he's very relatable. He doesn't have problems with guys in the locker room. They really like him. So, I mean, maybe you show up just enough here. So that teaser play is a strong one.
And finally, our last game here of the week, the Chiefs at the Broncos. You got the Chiefs.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. Did you see Osweiler trying to hype up the whole sideline in that game? And like no one listens to him. Coaches keep coaching. Players keep doing what they're doing. He paces the whole sideline trying to hype people up, and no one even acknowledges him.
The only person, unfortunately for him, was the cameraman who paid attention, because then it was all caught on camera. That's like when you know things are just
one of my favorite storylines of the year.
Real bad right there. On the Chiefs side of the ball, they've clinched the AFC West. They cannot climb or fall. They are locked into the number 4 seed. Absolutely nothing to play for. I think we see Patrick Mahomes in this game. I certainly think we see limited reps for Hunt, for Kelsey, for Hill. Like, I can't imagine them playing these guys and taking any chance on them getting hurt in this scenario where literally absolutely nothing to play for whatsoever. On the Broncos side of the ball, probably the end of the line here for Vance Joseph, but he's only been there a year, so it's not like they're going to rally around, this coach or anything like that. So one of those games, Joe, I'll tip my hat right here. This is just an overall pass for me, with the Broncos coming in here as 3-point favorites. Obviously, it's baked in that they think that the Chiefs are going to rest everybody in this one. Wouldn't surprise me if Mahomes came out here and beat this team, to be honest, but I think it's probably a pass for me.
Let's just go back 2 weeks. Say this is the exact matchup in Denver, but 2 weeks ago. What's the line? It's obviously going to be Kansas City as a favorite. So if you've got Denver coming out here 3.5, they don't think much of Andy Reid's Chiefs. And that's because these guys are probably going to take it easy. So I have to agree with you. I hate to end on a note where we both pass, but at least the next move for us here is going to be our favorite plays of the week, so we can come right back out guns blazing.
I agree. But listen, this is one of those games, guys, where you look at it and like you're probably going to get a rookie quarterback that's never played never started a game in his life. And so, you got Mahomes in there. You don't really know what you're going to see. It's just too many variables here for us to lay our good hard-earned money on this game. All right, Joe, what is your play of the week? Or if you got a couple of them, fire them off.
I've got 3. In no particular order. Game number 1 is going to be the Jaguars +6, like we talked about. I think Tom Coughlin and Doug Marrone, they are not happy with what they saw. They realize that they've got something here. Probably not a Super Bowl winner, but Coughlin's done more with similar situations. He's gone in as a 5-6 seed and turned the world upside down in the playoffs before. So they need to button it up defensively. I think getting 6 points there, I almost kind of like a little money line action as well. That also leads me into San Francisco. I like the 49ers plus the points. I like what you said about the money line. I think your ultimate tease is Saints and Chargers, and the Saints under 50.5 points. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot from Tampa Bay. Hopefully I didn't steal everything from you, but there were a lot of games to like, and we ended with a dud, so I figured I'd throw a bunch out there.
I like it. And listen, the only other game here that I'm going to be looking at pretty heavily, I think, is Buffalo and Miami. Listen, I understand it's a slim chance Buffalo gets in, but it is a chance. And you look at this Miami team, and look, they showed you what they're made of. They finish out the year 2-7 after starting off the year 4-2. You got Jay Cutler out there, who we already know through his years in the league does not care in the least bit about playing in the NFL. He came and cashed a $10 million check, and now he's going to ride off into the sunset. I think the Bills come out and play scrappy in this one. I think the Bills get the win on the road to keep their playoff chances alive. Joe, that is the end of the regular season. Maybe we'll be back here for some time in the playoffs, something like that. But this has been an awesome season. I've really, really enjoyed doing the show with you, man.
I've enjoyed the show. You, not so much.
Understandable.
I'm just kidding. It's been good stuff. We've learned this. This helps to kick this around back and forth. It always helps, I think, for each of us. And when Dave's with us as well, you start to hear different opinions. You maybe back off a pick you really liked. You maybe find some angle in a game that you weren't thinking about. And then we get the feedback from the listeners and the viewers. And we really appreciate that, guys. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Listen, I'll make the pitch on air to SBR right now. For you head to SBR odds. Obviously, you can see all the lines that we were talking about as well. But I'll make the pitch to SBR. Maybe next year figure, Joe, we do 2 a week. We do an early week like we do now, and then we come back later in the week and see if our opinion has changed on any of these games. Because again, sometimes injury reports come out, weather reports come out, different things come out that can really alter the way we think here in the earlier part of the week. But hopefully you guys have made some money along the way with us. This has been a pretty good season overall for us. It was one just absolutely horrible nuclear bomb week, but other than that, it's been pretty good.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
It'll happen.
That's why the Kelly criterion, bankroll management, maybe we should do an episode on that next season in the build up to the year. Let's put together a few how-tos, get everyone knowledgeable, and then we'll move into the picks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much to SBR. We really appreciate you guys as well. Thanks for producer Robert behind the scenes for making this show. For Dave Farah, for Joe Fortenbaugh, I am Matt Brown. We will see you guys soon here on the Play Action Podcast.